Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I wanted to do something a little bit different. I have a shrimp rack that I have set up and I was going to go over each tank individually, but in order to save time and I needed to have space for my shrimp because I'm running out of room, I decided to set the whole rack up at once. I wanted to talk about the soils that I'm going to be using for these setups. And one of them is just an old substrate that I had from a previous Neocaridina tank, and I'm going to put that into a couple of different tanks. The tanks on the top rack are two 15 gallons on the sides with two 10-gallon tanks in the middle. And on the bottom, I have a 33-gallon in the center, and the two little ones beside that are two 5-gallon tanks. One of them is acrylic, and I also have a 10-gallon tank on the left. I did a video on a Caridina shrimp tank setup, and in that video I did mention that I used tap water to fill up that tank, and I mixed some of my salts in there with it because my TDS from the tap is only a 70. But I have now upgraded my RO tub to a 55-gallon tub, so now I finally have enough water to do the things that I need to do. I do kind of like the steel racks rather than building them myself, and I do know that there's a giant price difference between the two, but I don't really have a ton of time on my hands, and to build a really nice rack that I really wanted for what I needed was going to take me a couple days to a few days and a lot of hours, whereas this I just kind of went to the store, picked it up, and put it together. I'm hoping that this is the last time that I have to move these tanks around. I've been moving my smaller tanks around quite a bit, and unfortunately I had to keep them lower to the ground for the last few months, and when that happens I tend to neglect the smaller tanks when they're that close to the ground, and the reason being is they're just so hard to access. And now that they're up high and I have plenty of room and space to work, I think it's really going to help me out when it comes to my smaller tanks. I have been kind of stockpiling plants in a couple of my tanks, and that's why they look really overloaded with plants, is because I knew that I was going to be setting these up really soon. So I wanted to make sure that I had enough plants and everything else that I needed. I am going to be getting in a giant order of driftwood and a few other shrimp accessories, and I'll be doing a video on that probably next week, and that's going to be going into all of these tanks, which I'm really excited about because I'm completely out of driftwood. One of these things that all of these tanks are going to need is a top on them, and I did have some spare glass outside, and so I'm going to show myself cutting just a little bit of it. Cutting glass is fairly easy, and it doesn't really take much more than a piece of glass that's not tempered and just a decent glass cutter. There are a lot of other alternatives besides using glass for the tops of tanks, but I was fortunate enough to where my neighbor redoes furniture, and so she always had a ton of glass laying around from all of those furniture pieces that she would redo, and she would always give it to me for free, and I just got lucky that way. I am running out, and so I'm gonna have to find some kind of different kind of tops for my tank. I think I have 2 or 3 sheets of this left. I do want to sand all these corners down. I don't think it really matters what grit the sandpaper is as long as you get those sharp edges down. And I learned that in the past that if you don't do this, you're almost guaranteed to cut yourself at least once taking this lid off. You do have to apply a little bit of pressure when you go to break it, but as long as the surface you're working on is straight and you have it right on the edge of it, it usually snaps fairly easily. Back to the setups here, I'm now draining one of these 10-gallon tanks into another 10-gallon tank, which is going to be my Neo Caridina Blue Dream tank. And I've been wanting Blue Dreams for a while, and I do have about 20 really nice looking ones, so I'm going to put these in that 10-gallon that I'm filling up now and see how they do. But since there's 3 shelves on this rack, or that's how I have it set up, I'm going to put one probably large tank on the bottom rather than get a bunch of little ones. So I'm on the hunt for a 120-gallon tank, and I think I'm going to switch that over to my Crystal Reds because they really are a really nice looking shrimp, and I want to give them as much space as I think they need. And right now I have them crammed in a 33-gallon, and there's a lot in there. So I really wanted to get a 120 set up, and I have 4 bags of ADA left, and I thought it'd be kind of neat to have one big tank. For these setups for active substrates, I'm going to be using ADA Amazonia. That is my go-to aqua soil for my Caridina shrimp. There are quite a few other brands, but it depends on where you live and what country, how easy some of this soil is to have access to. And right now I have a pretty good access to ADA Amazonia, and it's probably one of the cheaper ones out of all the aqua soils that are offered. So that's what I've been using, and it works really, really nice. All I'm really going to do now is just kind of toss some plants into all the tanks and let all of them cycle. Anything that has ADA Amazonia, I won't be putting any sort of shrimp in those for probably 2.5 to 3 months. It's just kind of how that soil works. But the results that I've had after those 3 months is remarkable. Now these tanks aren't fully set up yet. They're not. I still have to put a black background on all of them, and I also have to add a few more plants. And I said before that I'm getting some driftwood in, so there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to these tanks. I will give another update on this rack next week, but for this week, that's going to be it. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. If you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Have a wonderful day, and cheers.